We have somebody I've been looking forward to talking to for a while now. He is the founder of Preachers and Sneakers on Instagram, and he also wrote a book called Preachers and Sneakers. I am like 2/3 of the way in, man. Like,
hey,
what's going on?
Dang.
Y'all all got it. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good to see y'all. Sorry to interrupt you. I didn't realize my mic was on, honestly.
Oh no, you good. Like, I gotta say though, like growing up in a religious family and having that background, like I remember when I first became aware of your profile, I thought it was funny. And first of all, I was surprised that no one else had thought of doing it before then. Because it kind of sometimes you look at some of these pastors on TV and it's almost like a parody of itself, and so it's ripe for a profile like you created. But what I like about your book and what I like about your profile, where it just highlights, it's almost like it's just asking the question as opposed to this, not necessarily attacking, even though people take it that way.
Yeah.
To start a conversation, like, and I think you even said in your book, like, what's the cutoff? Where's the line? Like, when is materialism wealth corruptible and when is it too much? When does it undermine the message?
If you raise an eyebrow at anything in Christian culture, many people do take that as an attack. And I'm in Christian culture. Like I'm religious, and I tried my best to do exactly what you said. Try to be fair on both sides and not be so biased on one end or the other, because it's basically impossible for me to say, based on every single person's nuanced situation, what is right and what's wrong. I think there's some cultural things happening here that I want people to ask questions about, because I think many churches are obsessed with looking good, sounding good, attracting other attractive people, attracting big donations, all that kind of stuff. And oftentimes that distracts from the whole point of going to church in the first place.
And I come from a very religious family, and so when I told him I was having you on the show, some people were aware of who you were, and then some people weren't. But once everyone became aware of who you were, it was just like, how dare you have him on the show? And it was like, because I'm interested in having conversation, you learn things. And even if I disagree with somebody, you still learn some things. And I truly believe this. I think what's happened, not just in the religion, but I just think in the discourse and dialogue in this country, we've kind of created our own communities where we created groups or echo chambers of people that just reverberate or regurgitate our own ideas and thoughts back to us so that we feel validated in hearing it from someone else.
That's right.
And I think that can be bad because it's easy to hold a belief if it's unchallenged, right? It's easy to believe anything. You know what I'm saying? I think being able to talk to other people who come from a different perspective or a different belief challenges you in a good way, especially if it's an educated conversation. It challenges you in a good way because it helps you understand why you even believe anything. There's two types of people who are afraid of having a conversation. That's either a person who receives some type of benefit from the issue continuing or perpetuating the issue, or the person who doesn't want to deal with the issue and will rather remain blissfully ignorant. Like, think about racism, right? The types of people that don't want to really have that conversation are people who benefit from it or people that just don't want to deal with it. Those are the only two people that avoid those conversations. I have a lot of pastors in my family, so I reached out to them.
Here we go.
Yeah, to kind of, because I wanted to be fair and balanced. Once again, I didn't want to seem like I was attacking religion, even though I don't think you were, because I don't think you were attacking Christianity. You were attacking how you think some people use Christianity for their own financial benefit, but that's two different arguments. But I want to point out my personal definition of, because everybody kept saying you're judging. And a lot of times people use judging as a way to deflect from accountability. But to me, judging would be me placing my own standard on somebody else to look down on them or to treat them different. Accountability is holding you to your own standard and calling you out on it. Case in point, like somebody asked me, like, there's universal standards like stealing, killing, stealing and killing is wrong. Matter of fact, people who steal know stealing is wrong. How do I know this? Steal from a thief. They're going to get upset because you stole from them, because they know stealing is wrong. They just receive a benefit from doing it to you and not having it happen to them. Accountability, though, like, I'm an electrician. If I come to your house and I'm changing out plugs, and you got a small child, and I left those wires uncapped, right? You don't have to be an electrician to say, hey, that's wrong. You know what I'm saying? You should not have done that. Because as an electrician, I know better. Based on my schooling, based on my education, I had to in order to get a license, you had to go through some type of class and education,
and
right?
all that.
Exactly. So, yes, so you don't have to necessarily be an electrician to call me out on it. And I don't believe you have to necessarily be a Christian to necessarily call out somebody who sells that lifestyle or who is in a position of leadership.
Plenty of people in the comment section, if you read my comment section, are straight up judging people, and a lot of my critics assign the comment section to what I believe and what I do. But since day one, March of 2019, literally all I've done is repost these guys' pictures and then put the StockX price of their sneakers right next to it without saying anything one way or the other. So it's almost impossible for them to accuse me of judging. I've just it's easy to make it seem like I'm judging. And if you read the book, you get a better look into my heart about the whole thing. But it's a cultural critique because regardless of what you think about the thing, it's happening. And there was this whole pocket of pastors wearing all the hypest sneaks. And once the price tags were put right next to it, people had to contend with that. And then immediately they felt like they were being attacked, all because I just said, hey, did y'all know these shoes are worth $1,500, period.
Right.
And it's impossible to argue with it because the market data is the market data. Shout out to StockX. Y'all are in Detroit. And it's crazy how attacked people feel when people know the value of their sneakers.
Well, is religion a business? And in theory, the answer is no. But does it operate like one? Absolutely.
True enough. And he points that out in the book where he talks about, like, especially at the advent of television and, somewhere in the mid 20th century, like it was this shift to Dunk's point where it became about branding and,
attraction.
And capitalism and things like that. And then once you get to the 80s, you got the televangelist, and that creates like this whole new culture of theologians, if I for lack of a better word. And so it's interesting because you point out how religion is seen worldwide, and yet there seems to be this viewpoint of religion here in America. It's
a very Western thing we're talking about. Like the whole book is issues that most of the world can't even relate to. Like the idea that our churches, like I'm in Dallas right now, and there's several churches that bring in over 100 million a year in donations. Like that number is staggering and hard to comprehend as somebody in the United States. But compared to the billions of other people in the world that live off like $2 a day, it's bananas to even think about. But to your point about capitalism and the 80s and 90s kind of switching to an attractional model instead of like going to a stuffy old church and doing your thing on the pews, people turned church into kind of a thing to consume, where I'm going to go, I'm going to be entertained, I'm going to be comfortable, I'm going to be probably not challenged that much, not asked much, but I'm just going to ask to donate, and in return I'm going to get a nice service, I'm going to get nice music, I'm going to get a feel-good feeling on the way out. And now in 2021, it's turned into basically, in a lot of ways, for-profit corporations. I mean, they got nonprofit status, but you can make a ton of money from a church. You can have commercial real estate holdings, you can have whole like merch verticals, you can have music licensing that is like significant income, so tax-free and with no oversight and no reporting requirements, like zero reporting requirements.
Well, they're supposed to operate as nonprofits, but you have to, you can pay members of the board to take care, oversee cost.
Yeah,
right. It gets, and you would hope, my deal is I would hope everybody in those positions would operate above board, but I think every few months you see dudes in the very positions that we're talking about not operating above board. And so my deal as just like a regular idiot dude on Instagram, I'm like, can we do this a better way? Have we swung too far in the other direction trying to make church cool? So that's what the book's about. That's what the account is about. And, if people would maybe spend a second to check out the account or like listen to the podcast or read the book, they would understand that I'm not just here trying to poke the bear and trying to erode Christianity by any means. I got no problems with the Christianity, but I do think that there's some things that we could address or do better.
It's part of our identity, you know what I'm saying? And so it becomes such a part of who you are, so that, you know, and because you're so invested in this church, you're so invested in this one particular pastor, you know, it's almost like politics in a way where, you know, you get so caught up in being a Republican or Democrat that you go out of your way to support and defend them, even in the face of valid criticism. And it's just so funny how emotionally invested people get in either side of that.
It's an interesting look in. You get to see who idolizes who, because many people come to my account and laugh and think it's funny until their guy shows up on the account.
That's how it
and
works.
then they can't even. They'll message me saying, "You used to be funny, but now you've gone too far." That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, dude. You're making an idol out of these guys that aren't worth making idols. Like, I mean, there's plenty of people, there's plenty of great pastors out there. I think being a pastor or a preacher is a really hard job.
Yes.
And I want them to be compensated. I'm not even an authority to say how much you can make or what you can own or where you can go or what you can post on social media or anything. But I think it's telling how, like you said, it's telling how defensive people get in the face of the most gentle eyebrow raising ever, basically saying, "Hey, did you know this guy's shoes are worth $800?" And that's it. And now you're calling me, like, you're telling me I'm going to hell.
If Seeds goes on my page, right, and he sees a picture of my Kobe 4s, right, and we know how much Kobe's are going for, from the resale market. If he takes my picture and posts it and posts the StockX value, it's giving the insinuations that that's what I paid for it, when in actuality, I didn't pay nowhere near that. So sometimes, because pastors, you have relations. You could be a guy at his church who has bots and got him the shoe at resale, or his wife, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I think that may infer that this is what he paid, when in actuality we wouldn't know what he paid or how he got it. Pastors get gifts all the time, so somebody could have given it to him as a gift or whatever the case may be.
These are good prices you're posting. They've gone up.
Yeah, so
those are from 2 years ago.
Those
are from 2 years ago.
So so that's the common question.
They've gone up almost double.
Sometimes that can be insinuating that's what they paid when neither one of us knew how much he or she did pay for those.
But I think the point is the optics. Like, if I go to the soup kitchen in a fur coat and I'm, I got a mink on as I'm pouring soup into some homeless person's bowl, it's just the optics of that just look off.
I guess to me, people come, like, sneakers are big now, so people come to church with sneakers on. I think they do it because now, before growing up, the message attract people to the church. Now people mindsets are changed. They like shiny, bright, and things of that nature. Remember, our grandparents went to church. It was hot, no fans, no air.
Yeah.
But they went for the message. Now people want to say, okay, if I'm coming here, do you got central air? How's your seating? Is it comfortable? Is it cushion? How's the church singing? Like, so it is, some of it they do overdo it, but on the same side, it is some of what people expect now. It's just like rap, like music now. We used to want bars. Now people start making singing songs because that's all the new kids like now. So just as how you hold the artist accountable and the preacher, you also got to hold the congregation to what they accept and what they attract to.
To your point about more modern church experience, people want to have a comfortable experience. I think that's worth talking about. If you donate to churches and you're participating in Christianity, that kind of stuff, I don't think that's something to overlook. And I think plenty of people have overlooked that idea, that we've turned it into something to be just comfortable and not challenging, and just attract people but not call them to anything else, or call them to any new standards of life. And so I think that's what I wanted to bring up with the book and ask questions about it. And to your point, most of these guys they either have a back door or they are getting gifted this stuff all the time. And so it's just an interesting look into what church has become.
Two things I want to point out. I think it's one thing to have central air in your church. It's another to have fog machines and laser beams. Two, because I know we're focused on the sneakers part, but I think the whole point of it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're creating a facetious take on. So the preachers and sneakers, to me, is a microcosm of a bigger issue.
Yes.
Whereas, once again, it's about sneakers is one thing, but you got pastors that are asking for private jets. You know what I'm saying? And I think that this is just a kind of an entryway into that conversation of what is too much, when is materialism. And you make a good point in the book where you talk about how we've correlated blessed with material wealth. And you point out, like, once again, you talk about how the majority of the world lives in poverty. So if blessed means you have this, then what does that say about other people who don't have all those things?
The televangelists of our maybe parents and grandparents' age are starting to go away, but there's a new message about kind of this ambiguous definition of being blessed, and you can kind of throw it around in kind of a motivational self-help type sermon. And if you're not careful and you don't define what being blessed means, then oftentimes you can equate it to being blessed with a promotion or a new car or a new house or whatever. And if your theology is based on literally God, like transacting with God so he can give you a job promotion, then you have to contend with, well, what does God think about the rest of the world, or how does God bless the rest of the world? And so that's just what I want people to think about is you know, do you follow God for the trinkets, or do you follow God for the things that he's actually really capable of doing?
I feel blessed to be on this show.
Hashtag blessed.
Only time you mention being blessed is when you receive things, then yes, you need to reevaluate and reappreciate life. But things like I say, yeah, I'm blessed to have means of transportation. I'm blessed to have this opportunity to do this.
But people are saying they're blessed and praise Allah on Twitter when they hit a pair of sneakers.
Yeah, but those people,
which that does take a blessing though to hit on sneakers.
It does, right? I was gonna say,
yeah, but yeah, of course, like that's why I say it goes to mean for different people, you know, to mean different things. Of course, when you make it that plain, like I think my preacher said one time, stop bothering God about getting you a car or a house. Like, go get you a credit, pay your bills on time. You can go get you a car. Stop asking God to do something for you
that you can do for yourself.
Earlier, you was talking about, you know, dressing up and everything. But if you look at, too, just the history of church itself, like, even back in the 50s and the 40s, like, your preacher gonna dress nice. He gonna have on his gaiters. He gonna have on his nice suit every Sunday. And a lot of people, that's why you got that saying, Sunday's best. Like, you go to church for the look. Like, everybody wants to look their best at church. I just think maybe in black culture particularly, that's just something that's always been a thing.
When Jay-Z released 444, and a lot of people was like, why didn't you release this back in 98? He said, sometimes I had to give you the sugar before I give you the medicine. Sometimes back when, like, some people wouldn't listen to Jesus till he started performing miracles. And then it was like, you ain't looking like you the son of God, or whatever the case may be. Now it's just like, when I'm trying to attract younger people, I'll put on these off-whites to get your attention, but now that I got your attention, here's the message. Not all preachers are like that, but some operate in that facet that goes back to try and captivate your audience.
Sometimes in these conversations, we create this false dichotomy where you're either wearing a potato sack or you're wearing gaiters. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is an in-between, right? There's a way to look presentable without looking like a pimp. You know what I'm saying? So I think sometimes people, and goes back to what people's intentions are, right? Like, if your intentions are to be the sharpest person at church or to receive the word, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's the point of this conversation is, you know what I'm saying, what type of environment are you creating that goes towards the latter? You know what I'm saying? What are you going to church for? Like, I look at Dr. King. Nobody knows what shoes he wore. Nobody knows what suit he wore. Because it wasn't about that. You know what I'm saying? And
that's also different. Like I said, that was a different time period. Our parents didn't focus on what the newer generation now focuses on.
I agree with you. Then it becomes who sets the menu, the restaurant or the customers? You know what I'm saying? And like you said earlier, it's a little bit of both. You know what I'm saying? Because if the customers are buying this, of course you got to adjust the menu, but at the same time, they can only order what you put on the menus.
Many people show up to my account and will say, you know, who says pastors can't have nice things? I mean, not me. I think everybody can have nice things. I've never said ever what people can and can't have. I do think that there's some wisdom, though, if you're living off donations, to present yourself in a way that doesn't look like you're banking off of those donations. I mean, people are struggling. Like, people all over the world are struggling and are looking for hope and help. And at a minimum, it's a little gross for a lot of people. And it feels exclusionary if you're donating, sacrificially to a ministry or something. And then it appears that this guy or girl is living a pretty lavish lifestyle off those donations. I'm definitely not a person that wants anybody to live in poverty or squalor or anything. But also, for everyone, there's some element where it feels like it's too much. Like if you bring up Creflo Dollar asking for his second or third private jet, to most rational people, that feels ridiculous.
I agree with you.
Yeah, right.
But that's like a fuzzy line because are we mad about the one jet, or are we only mad about when he's asking for a third jet? And so it's an imperfect conversation. It's a messy thing. It's kind of uncomfortable a lot of times.
Very.
And 2 years later, I'm just trying to do right by the opportunity to get people to start talking about this kind of stuff, because I think, I know for a fact that many preachers have adjusted how they present themselves online and when they present the gospel, in hopes of being less distracting, making it less about them and more about God, which I think is for the better.
Anytime money enters the system, you have to be real careful how it's handled, because it can be easily corruptible. Like I'm a UAW member, and we just came out of a corruption scandal where Chrysler was paying our union members to sell us out. And so money, becomes, sometimes when there's a lot of money, that becomes motivation. And and so you got to be very careful as far as how you handle that. And it seems to me that sometimes people think religion is removed from that, or immune from it. Two, though, and you brought it up in the book, the word clout, like, what I'm saying? Because I think that plays a big part of it too. Wanting to be seen, and and it made me think about, you pointed it out in the book. When I was younger, a particular pastor, he had security guards and he had an armor bearer who carried his Bible for him. And I remember thinking, like, at 14 years old, that's odd. Like, why does my pastor need a security guard? Like, who's coming after this dude? Especially, here's the funny part. If you only need security at church, like, if you that type of person that needs security, wouldn't you need that, like, 24/7? Like, if you're the president or you're a celebrity, right? Like, if you only need it at church, then it's like, what are you preaching? Like, if I wanted to look important, I go to the mall, I'm going to have my friends dressed up in suits with earbuds, because people are going to be like, who's that? He is security. He must be somebody famous. He must be somebody important. And I think that, like, how much of that plays into the popular culture of some of these preachers in sneakers?
Part of this is on the congregation of these people, and part of it's on us on Instagram for following some of these people and building them up as celebrities. But if you elevate a guy or girl to the very top where he needs security and needs private entrances and green rooms and everything, none of those things in and of themselves are bad, I don't think.
Right.
But if your entire ministry is based off of the moral behavior of one guy or one girl, the moment that dude sleeps around or embezzles funds or anything, that entire ministry erodes.
Well, if you do it out of needing it, that's one thing. If you do it to portray an image, that's back to manipulation and mind
flexing.
control.
Yeah. I mean, it goes into all these different elements about, like, social media and how we all build up our own image to try to present ourselves in a way that's probably not really true to what is actually happening. And Christians are no different. We want to present ourselves in a way where people think our life is tight and we're jet setting around the world and we've got courtside seats and everything is like we're living a movie, when in fact, like, most of us have our own problems and are struggling, and it's just almost pointless to build yourself up in a way that attracts glory, because we're all kind of flawed humans. And I think in a pastoral perspective, it's the stakes are even higher, because now you have people looking to you for spiritual guidance, and you're building yourself up to look like a celebrity, or we're building them up to operate like an untouchable celebrity. And then, I mean, why wouldn't you screw that up? Like, why wouldn't you, if you're given all the money and attention and fame in the world, it seems like it would be pretty easy to screw it all up. Yeah.
Would it be safe to say that, like, in the past, maybe 20 years, that just the preaching game itself is just a new hustle, like rap?
For some people.
Like, 'cause I
like that you call it a hustle.
No, it is for some people, though.
Like, it's just a new hustle. Like, people looking at, like you said, the TD Jakes and all the Kenlocks, and they like, dang, look at, they getting this. Oh, they getting a private jet. Oh, people donating for this. And you remember going to church as a kid, mostly. Some people get up there, get the Bible, just start talking, saying whatever, and then next thing you know, they build up this following just like a rapper. You know what I'm saying? They just build and build and build onto this facade for clout and all different things, hanging around, networking with the right people, and it just seemed like it's just a new elaborate new hustle.
I remember seeing the distinct shift between Bible teaching and, like, money teaching. Like I literally been in a church where like they would throw money at the pastor's feet, and they would do this thing where they would like gesture like they were pulling on a slot machine, and like money coming to me now. And it was always funny to me because once again I was like a teenager, and I'm like, okay, like after a year of this, y'all still poor. I ain't heard not one business plan. I ain't heard not one pitch deck. You know what I'm saying?
It's ironic because you know what the best-selling book of all time is?
The Bible.
Yeah.
Money appeals to everyone because everybody wants it. And if that's your motivation for going to church or your motivation to starting a church, I think that goes towards intent. And I think that's been some people's problem with religion in general, is because they feel like she said, it become the new hustle. And so trying to distinguish between each pastor's intent becomes too much of a chore, and it's just like, I'd rather not deal with it and not go.
Let me ask people this. So when a preacher is doing something or reaching out to people when they need donations, they need money or X, Y, and Z, right? And so you have a problem with that, right? Rightfully so. But when Kanye does it to you, don't speak to you, don't talk to you, but when it's time to drop a shoe or it's time to drop some merch, he's all on Instagram shaking hands with people, and you divulge in that and you support that. The same accountability that you hold that individual when it comes to helping people, because you don't have to be a preacher to help the people. You don't have to be a preacher to help the less fortunate. So my thing is, if you're going to hold them as far as their benevolence and how them helping the people less fortunate, and as far as when it comes to that message, shouldn't you hold other people that you support the same way?
No. I disagree with that, because one, intent. Kanye is not a pastor. He's selling you a product. He's in it for himself.
He's
so I don't
far
hold
beyond
Kanye.
a pastor. He's a revolutionary.
Okay.
He's a martyr.
Okay, now you just being funny.
Dunks is here to stir.
I know he's just here to spoil the conversation. But no, so I don't look at Kanye as a pastor. I don't look at him as some type of moral compass. I don't look at him as some type of leader.
Who else has accomplished what he's accomplished?
Okay.
No, I'm not saying that.
Hold on, let me answer his question though. Like, so I look at it like, okay, Kanye's selling some music. Here's my $10. That's a trade-off. Whereas a pastor is selling you a lifestyle. He's telling you this is what you need to do in order to be blessed, to live, to go to heaven, all this other stuff. I don't compare pastors to Kanye. I don't compare pastors to Jay-Z. They're not the barometer. So if you're going to promote this lifestyle, to me, like, it has to fall in line with the person that you are calling yourself a follower of.
If it's hard to distinguish between Jay-Z and a preacher of the gospel, I think that's probably an issue, because Jay-Z's or Kanye's an entertainer and a performer. A pastor is called to lead people spiritually. It's two very different, to me. And what I understand about the Bible is that pastors are called to, I mean, James 3:30 talks about a much higher standard. Not many of you should be teachers because you're going to be judged more strictly. The Bible says that. I don't say that. And it's a hard job. Right. I don't think that's in the Bible. But anyways.
He's Jewish. So
if you're exchanging, to me and to a lot of people, potentially millions of people, selling the product of your salvation for a price seems gross. And at a certain point, a lot of churches have turned into essentially selling God, selling salvation, selling a blessed lifestyle in return for sowing a seed into a ministry. And that's a dangerous game to play.
Because this leads into another topic you brought up, as how they rush celebrities onto these pulpits in order to get attention. And it made me think about Mace. I know people probably don't might not remember that, but I remember
Stick does.
When he left the rap game to become a pastor, and how quickly he was in the pulpit preaching. And I just thought it was odd because once again, coming from a religious background and watching the other pastors have to go through that process of going through the theology school and learning and basically earning their due, and to see him just kind of like usurp that process because he was Mace. And we all know why, because he's famous and stuff.
I think it's more of a mirror on us and our obsession with celebrities, because kind of with Kanye, when he straight up was like, I'm a Christian now and I'm doing all of this for Christ, immediately, like within the week or the next week, he was on Joel Osteen's stage and he was on the Tonight Show talking about all of his theology and everything. And
coincidence.
if you're in a Christian context, that seems unwise, because you want to give new believers the chance to like actually figure out what they believe and why they believe it, instead of immediately throwing them on the stage. But for a lot of people, you could see on Instagram, all the big pastors were trying to take pictures with them to kind of say, look at our success story. Christianity can be cool too. And, you know, I just don't like using people as a prop. But I just wanted to point out how in the past that we've tried to use fame as a tool when it's like that shouldn't be the end goal if you're trying to follow God. Yet when somebody like Bieber or Kanye is vocal about his faith, we're very quick to like table all standards and all wisdom in treating new believers and just throw them on the biggest stage and say, yeah, preach about God. What's the worst that could happen?
I think the fallout from that is, like you said, when you rush them up there so quickly, if they ever change their mind or if they do something that doesn't live up to that religion, like you said earlier, like there's fallout from that. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And so, because just as easily as you can get people in because of this famous person, you can lose people because of that famous person. And so I think, and that's the risk I think a lot of people take with that. I think if you have this conversation, you know, with yourself or with other people in your church, or even with your pastor, and you're able to ask those questions, address them, and still remain faithful, I think that makes your relationship better. And once again, this goes back to my point. If you are afraid of having this conversation, you either benefit from the issue we're talking about, or you don't want to come to that reality. You know, like sometimes there are people who are in relationships and they know that person is like cheating on them, but they don't want to know. They want to remain in that ignorance, that blissful ignorance, because they don't want to know for sure, because then they have to live with that reality. You know, so decisions have to be made. It's
a hard, uncomfortable thing to spend any brain power on. Like this isn't something that I really enjoy thinking about all the time or talking about, because there's no concrete answers. If I had the concrete answer, I would give it to everybody. But
exactly,
I'm still wrestling through some of these things too. But is it worth discussing? Because, you know, often if we're talking about any single situation, it always usually gets down to, well, it matters what their intent is, or it matters what their heart is, or you know, all these different nuanced things. And if you get bogged down in that, then it makes it start to feel like, well, this isn't even worth discussing. But I want to be the type of person that maybe leans into hard things in hopes of developing either my relationship with God or a relationship with the people around me, and pushing people to be more real with themselves and, you know, with their community. The prospect of eternal life or following a God that's in control, that should be the thing that attracts people, instead of a good-looking dude or a nice-sounding song or a nice-sounding production. All those things have utility, and all those things, I think we're called to be excellent in everything that we do, and so there's an element to that. But once it starts to become more about that stuff instead of the one that's actually worth elevating, I think that's to the church's detriment.
I mean, think about any relationship. If I'm married to somebody who's with me because of my money and not because of me, that's facts. That's not a good relationship. Too often when we talk about pastors and the opulence and the money, like we look at it as, oh, well, that's just his. But the thing is, there's real world consequences to that, because like you said, people are donating their money and their resources to it. And a lot of times they're giving their all. Like in the John Oliver segment pointed out, like how this one woman, like she gave all her money. She's battling cancer. This pastor's telling her, buy my holy oil. And, you know, she gave all her money and died. And, you know what I'm saying? And so there's real world consequences to that. Like not everybody has the money to give. So to that point, you know, to have these people live in opulence while people are struggling, and yet you're using their religion as a way to manipulate them out of the little bit that they have so that you can live off of it. I think that, to me, is the crux I think that you're really getting at. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
The people that do exactly that are freaking messed up, and they're gonna have to account for that, because that's evil. I mean, there's nothing biblical about that. That's pure manipulation.
But that's called wolf in sheep's clothing, though. You know, that's the wolf in sheep's clothing. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in defending that we don't start to think and ask these questions or have these conversations, because the whole point of the wolf putting on sheep's clothing is so that it looks like a sheep.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
And if nobody's willing to ask the question ever, no matter what level anything is happening, that you're gonna have dudes that can succeed at doing that.
Exactly.
And so, like, the people that I get criticized all the time, and I get it for what I do, but oftentimes there's no one asking a question about the Jim Bakkers of the world, or the Benny Hinns of the world that are basically getting mega rich off of baseless claims that God is going to heal such and such person from their cancer. And if everyone around them isn't going to ask questions about it, then I want to be the type of person that raises at least an eyebrow and says like, hey bro, this doesn't seem in line with what you're saying. But again, that's like, it's kind of specific to every individual situation. Right. And so hear me when I say like, my account in this book is not for me to define who and who isn't a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yes. But I think we should be the type of people that ask questions when something doesn't seem right.
If this is an issue, now how big or small that issue is, I don't know, but it's an issue. If it's causing people to either leave the church or not want to go to the church, then I think it's something worth discussing, because I do think religion serves a purpose. Because somebody who's a big, I don't want to say, I guess, somebody who looks up to somebody like Malcolm X, and to see how his religion played such a pivotal part in him becoming who he was, you know what I'm saying? So I see the potential of religion, and I see how it works in some people's lives. Even though I'm not religious myself, I see how it works for other people, just like being a vegan. I see how it works in other people. I just choose to eat steak. Man, you definitely started a conversation. Like I said, like I've always
on the sneaker show. I'm sorry, we kind of derailed it.
No, I like it though. I mean, because sneakers have a way of kind of, especially nowadays, have a way of kind of bleeding into other facets of life. You know what I'm saying?
That's
like
right.
It's flowed into music, it's flowed into art, and now it's flowed into religion. So I appreciate the fact that you used it, like I said, as a vehicle to start a conversation. And hopefully people see it as just that. Like you said, you're not saying this is right, this is wrong. You're not saying he's right, he's wrong. You're saying here are questions I have, here are issues I have, let's have a conversation. And hopefully people are able to see that for what it is and not necessarily get so caught up in what they feel like is an attack, because sometimes people take constructive feedback as an attack. And so I think that what you did is brilliant. This book is written brilliantly. It's fun to read, and I love how at the end of every chapter you ask questions to make you think, and so
that's right.
Where can people buy this book?
Preachersandsneakers.com. They publishers don't want you to publicize one retailer over the other, even though there's the one that everybody buys books,
everywhere.
Everywhere. But preachersandsneakers.com. And man, I appreciate your perspective on it. I hope that's what other people get out of it, because truly, like, it's not an attack, but it is a concern, or getting people to ask questions. And to Adrian's point earlier, like, at what point do we look at ourselves for this thing? I think right now, like, the thing I say all the time when people come in the comment section and start to get all judgy, I say is, like, if you want them to be about it, you better be about it also. Like, we have a responsibility too to give and be generous in our own lives, and to have a higher standard than just to, like, get whatever we want whenever we want. And so I hope people get that out of the book as well. But yeah, preachersandsneakers.com. You can go buy the book, and then on Instagram I'm at preachers_sneakers, and that should be plenty of content for you to get you fired up.
Yeah. Are you a pastor yourself? Because somebody said that. Somebody said you were trying to be a pastor. Okay.
No.
All right, cool. I just want
it would take an act of literally God to get.
And I gotta say
job.
This too, because I do find it ironic, because I heard the word like judging a lot, and I'm like, for a religion that goes out their way to go tell other people how to live their lives, it's kind of funny then all of a sudden when they receive that criticism reciprocated.
Gentle criticism.
Yeah, and it's like all of a sudden, oh, you're judging me. But it's like, okay, weren't you just at the gay marriage rally just a week ago with signs? Like, so and that's a whole bag of worms that I ain't trying to get into. But it's just funny to me how, once again, when I hear judging, sometimes it's to evade accountability. So it almost feels like that. So, but no, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show. I definitely, making time for us or whatever. Stay in touch, man. Like, 'cause I foresee us having more conversations in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate y'all having me. This was fun. I didn't know about y'all's show, but now I'm a big fan. I watched earlier, and I saw y'all dishing on the Yeezy 500s, which I am fully on board with. Those are
man, you were doing so good. You were doing so good, man.
Those ain't it, Kanye.
Where's the trash can? I'm throwing this book away.
But yeah, no, I appreciate y'all. I appreciate the deep, hard questions that y'all asked. I think it's worth discussing. And shout out to Detroit and what y'all are doing. I appreciate y'all having me, for real.